Why do exceptions matter so much to us? Like, why is it so important that our situation is different? That we are like a special case, that the rule doesn't fully apply. Like, why does that matter? It's because an exception does something very specific. It confirms the rule and it suspends it at the same time. So what it does is it says, this is valid, but it's not completely valid. And that has like an effect. It creates a kind of space, a space where you are not fully determined by the rule, but you also haven't left it. So in a way, the exception becomes something like a negotiated space between submission and collapse. And I think that's why we need it. Because without the rule, everything feels unstable. But without the exception, everything becomes unlivable. Like too rigid, too absolute. So instead of choosing, what we try to do is we try to hold both. And this isn't just abstract. You can see this. You can see this in contemporary thought. Like take Slavoj Žižek, for example. I think actually he's a great example. He repeatedly points to the idea that ideology doesn't work through rigid rules alone, but through like the way that people bend them. And not by rejecting them, but by saying, yeah, but not here, if that makes sense. Or, take Judith Butler. Her work shows that norms don't just enforce themselves. They produce edge cases, like ambiguities, deviations, borderline identities, and those don't destroy the norm. They actually show how the norm functions. Also, another good example is Byung-Chul Han, who very much takes this into the present, into a cultural space that we can understand and identify with, where the exception kind of becomes something internalized, not something granted to you, but something you try to become. I know this system is exhausting, but I'll be the one who makes it work. So now exceptionalism isn't just a structure. It becomes an aspiration. And culturally, this is kind of everywhere. In hustle culture, for example, I'll be the one who succeeds. In therapy culture, it's I'm aware so that I'm not like other people. In relationships, it's this connection is different. In politics, it's this situation is unique. It's always the same move. The exception protects you from being fully determined by the rule, but it also keeps you attached to the rule, to the system, because the exception only makes sense in relation to the rule. So when you say, I am different, you're still saying, I am different from something that defines me. And that's kind of where it all becomes symbolic. So the exception starts to stand for things like hope and escape and uniqueness and possibility. And it tells you you're not completely trapped. But it also quietly tells you that you are still inside. And I think that's the real function of exceptionalism. It gives you just enough distance to feel free without actually leaving any.